Welcome to the channel Lying Whispers, my emotionally curious little chaos gremlins. Are you ready to waste a few more minutes of your day with me in this absolutely unnecessary but deeply therapeutic public service? Because today's story comes with ambition, fake smiles, professional success, and a friendship that rotted the second jealousy walked into the room. Before we begin, do the basics. Subscribe, hit like. Share this with that supportive friend who claps a little too quietly when you win. And stick with me, my friends, because this story starts classy and ends messy. Now, pause everything, go grab a coffee. Seriously, grab a coffee and follow this absurd story with me, because what you're about to hear sounds exaggerated until you realize it isn't. And that's the scary part.
This story is told in third person, not because it hurts less, but because sometimes the only way to survive your own emotional disaster is to step back and narrate it like a cautionary tale. Also, it gives me full permission to judge everyone involved with elegance and just the right amount of sarcasm. Our protagonist, let's call her Lucia. Pretty name, complicated life. Lucia didn't come from privilege, my friends. No connections. No shortcuts. No magical friend of a friend. She was the kind of woman who worked quietly while others complained loudly. The kind who stayed late, showed up early, and still apologized for taking up space. For years, Lucia climbed slowly, one step at a time. Bad bosses, underpaid projects, meetings that should have been emails. But she kept going, because she had a goal: independence, stability, and maybe, just maybe, recognition. And then it happened. The big project. The promotion. Her name spoken in rooms that actually mattered. A paycheck that finally matched her talent. She didn't brag. She didn't post a motivational thread. She didn't scream manifestation into the void. She smiled and kept working. And that, my friends, is when the problem started. Because real success doesn't just change your life. It exposes other people's insecurities. Lucia had a close friend. A long-term friend. A we've cried together in cheap bars kind of friend. Let's call her Valeria. Valeria knew everything. The fears. The dreams. The doubts Lucia never said out loud. They had promised loyalty, celebrated milestones, and sworn they'd always be there for each other. Valeria always said she was happy for Lucia. Always. But the tone started to shift. At first, it was subtle. Almost invisible. "Oh, guess you're too busy for us now, Miss Successful. Don't change, okay?" Money goes to people's heads. Laughs disguised as jokes. Smiles with sharp edges. Lucia brushed it off. Because when you love someone, you explain away their behavior. She's joking. She's stressed. She didn't mean it like that. Sound familiar, my friends? The thing about ignoring red flags is that betrayal doesn't slow down. It accelerates. While Lucia's career took off, Valeria stayed stuck. Same jobs. Same complaints. Same victim narrative. And listen, life isn't a competition until someone turns it into one. Valeria started showing up less, replying slower, downplaying Lucia's achievements in front of others. And when she couldn't ignore them, she added the poison. Yeah, but they probably overwork you. Yeah, but money isn't everything. Yeah, but I wouldn't sell my piece for that. Sure. Of course you wouldn't. Lucia, focused and exhausted, didn't notice how the air was changing. She was too busy building something real to imagine someone close was planning how to shake it. And there was something else glowing in Lucia's life, a healthy relationship. Stable. Calm. Boring in the best possible way. The kind that doesn't create drama and for that exact reason, triggers envy. Her partner, let's call him Daniel, was supportive, present, and proud of her. He didn't feel threatened by her success. Rare species, I know. Guess who suddenly became very interested in that relationship? Exactly. Valeria started with innocent comments. Don't you think Daniel seems a little distant lately? I'm not saying anything, but a friend of mine went through something similar. That sentence should come with a warning label, my friends. Lucia hesitated. Not because she didn't trust Daniel, but because the seed had been planted. And Valeria knew exactly where to press, what to say, and when to stay quiet. Because jealousy doesn't scream. It whispers. Meanwhile, Valeria started messaging Daniel. Casually. Checking in. Expressing concern. Wearing the mask of the caring friend. And let me pause right here and ask you, what would you do in Lucia's place? Trust the friend you've known for years, or the quiet discomfort in your chest. Because what comes next, my friends, is no longer awkward. It's intentional. And trust me, this is just the beginning. Lucia didn't realize she had stepped into an emotional minefield. Not yet. She was still moving on autopilot work, meetings, deadlines, growth. When you're building something real, you don't imagine that someone close to you is busy figuring out how to crack the foundation. Valeria, on the other hand, had time. Too much time. And a very specific focus. She began to insert herself into Daniel's life in a way that was just subtle enough to seem harmless. Not flirtatious. Not obvious. Strategic. Calculated. The kind of presence that leaves no fingerprints, but somehow lingers. A message here. A meme there. Lucia mentioned you were stressed. Just wanted to check in. Concern cosplay. Empathy theater. Daniel didn't panic. He didn't overreact. But something felt off. Not alarming, just unnecessary. Like a person hovering too close to a line they weren't supposed to cross. Valeria spoke about Lucia with a strange tone. Not hostile. Not supportive. Ambiguous. She's changed a lot lately. She doesn't really have time for people anymore. Sometimes I think success got to her a bit. Always sometimes. Always I feel like. Never accusations, just suggestions. Lucia, still trusting, still hopeful, still unwilling to imagine betrayal, didn't catch it right away. Because real betrayal doesn't wear a villain's outfit. It wears familiarity. Inside jokes. Shared memories. The dynamic between the three of them shifted. Conversations felt heavier. Silences stretched too long. Jokes landed flat. Valeria watched carefully. Observed reactions. Waited. Because she didn't want to cause the explosion. She wanted to trigger it. Then came the message. Long, too long. Filled with "I don't want to hurt you," and "I'm only saying this because I care." The classic emotional disclaimer that always precedes emotional damage. She hinted that Daniel seemed distant. That Shed noticed changes. That maybe he felt overshadowed by Lucia's success. Because nothing says supportive friend like questioning your partner's masculinity the moment your life starts going well. Lucia read the message once. Then again. Then a third time. Her stomach tightened, not with certainty, but with doubt. Not doubt about Daniel. Doubt about herself. And that, my friends, is the most dangerous outcome. When someone manages to make you question your own instincts. Lucia decided to talk to Daniel, not dramatically, not emotionally, but honestly. And Daniel, calm and transparent, told her everything. He showed her the messages. Explained the discomfort. Admitted that Valeria made him feel monitored. Evaluated. Like he was being positioned as a tool rather than a person. Lucia went quiet. Because suddenly the puzzle pieces clicked. The jokes. The comments. The subtle distance. The friendship wasn't a friendship anymore. It was a comparison game. But Valeria didn't stop. When her first attempt didn't create the crack she wanted, she shifted strategies. She became the victim. Started sharing edited versions of the story with mutual acquaintances. Painted herself as the concerned friend. The one who tried to help. I was just worried. She's been really sensitive lately. Ever since she started doing well, she's different. Funny how success always becomes the villain when envy runs out of excuses. Lucia started noticing changes in people's behavior. Side glances, awkward pauses, carefully worded questions. The damage had gone public. And that hurts differently because it doesn't just attack your relationship. It attacks your credibility. Then came the moment that sealed everything. A celebration. One of Lucia's biggest professional wins. A night that should have been full of pride, laughter, and genuine support. Valeria was invited because Lucia still believed in the benefit of the doubt. Mistake. Valeria drank too much, spoke too freely, and dropped comments that were no longer subtle. Insinuations, comparisons, half-truths disguised as jokes. Daniel noticed. Lucia felt it. And then right there, in front of everyone, Valeria crossed the final line. A direct, uncomfortable remark meant to publicly question Lucia's relationship and success. Silence. The heavy kind. The revealing kind. Lucia inhaled slowly, looked at Valeria, and for the first time, she didn't see a friend. She saw someone who couldn't survive watching her shine. There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting, no tears in public, just something far more permanent: clarity. Lucia stepped back, set boundaries, closed doors, and Valeria lost her stage. But don't get comfortable, my friends, because there are people who don't know how to lose gracefully. And when they lose access, they lose control. Valeria hadn't just lost Lucia as a friend, she'd lost her reference point, her comparison chart, her emotional measuring stick. And without that mirror, she didn't know who she was supposed to be anymore. Lucia, meanwhile, entered a strange emotional limbo. Not heartbreak, not relief, something quieter, heavier. That dull ache that comes from realizing you invested years of trust in someone who is secretly rooting against you. She kept moving forward: work, projects, plans, but she stopped sharing. Stopped over-explaining. Stopped opening doors just because someone knocked. Once betrayal comes from that close, you learn to lock things without guilt. Valeria didn't disappear completely. She lingered. Not directly. Not openly. She existed in whispers. In side comments passed through mutual friends. In distorted stories that somehow always painted her as misunderstood. The narrative was simple, efficient, and poisonous. Lucia had changed. Lucia had become cold. Lucia had chosen ambition over people. A classic. And the thing about that kind of narrative is that it spreads fast because it comforts people who are afraid of their own stagnation. It gives them a reason to believe success comes with a moral flaw. Daniel was one of the first to fully disengage. Not because Lucia asked him to. Not because of drama. But because Valeria's energy had become exhausting. Every conversation with her circled back to resentment, comparison, or subtle bitterness disguised as concern. Some people don't drain you with anger. They drain you with entitlement. Lucia, slowly and deliberately, rebuilt her circle. She gravitated toward people who didn't compete with her happiness, who celebrated without keeping score, who didn't need her to shrink so they could feel tall. And let me tell you, my friends, there is nothing more threatening to an insecure person than someone who stops reacting. But Valeria wasn't done. There was one last move, the ugliest one. In a professional context, Valeria began planting doubts. Nothing explicit, nothing traceable, just carefully placed comments designed to suggest Lucia's success might not be entirely clean. A raised eyebrow here, a vague concern there. Because when envy can't reach your life directly, it tries to poison your reputation. This time, though, Lucia didn't freeze. She didn't spiral. She didn't internalize the attack. She responded with what Valeria never had: credibility. Results. Consistency. A reputation built over time, not emotion. The attempt failed. Publicly. Painfully. And in that failure, Valeria was finally exposed not as a villain, not as a mastermind, but as something far more uncomfortable: a deeply insecure person who couldn't stand being left behind. The whispers stopped. The invitations dried up. The attention moved elsewhere. Silence became her consequence. Lucia didn't celebrate that fall. There was no satisfaction, No revenge monologue, no I told you so. She just kept walking forward. Because the real win isn't watching someone who tried to sabotage you collapse, it's realizing you don't need to look back anymore. And here's the part that stings the most. Valeria wasn't evil from the start. She was wounded, stagnant, afraid. She didn't want to be like Lucia. She wanted Lucia to stop becoming who she was meant to be. And that realization? That's the one that stays with you. Because sometimes the people who hurt you the most aren't trying to destroy you. They're just terrified of being left behind. And that, my friends, leads us to the final reflection.